We're live.
Yes.
We are alive and live.
Yes, that's good.
It's me, Heather the Treasure Pirate, and Lainie from Big Girls Really Do Cry, back again for episode number 2 of the new series.
Yes, we are. And it's flew this week already, hasn't it? It's just seemed like last week when we were starting it, and now we're already here
It
in the
was.
second week. Yeah, that's true.
It was only last week.
Yeah, I'm good at pointing out the facts. Yeah.
We like the statement of bleeding obvious. It never hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. What I meant to say was it feels like it was just yesterday, essentially, not 7 days ago. That's what I
Time is a
meant.
very strange thing. Time is a weird thing. It's very subjective.
Yeah.
And it's not linear and it's not subject to the rules. So, yes, it does do weird things, doesn't it?
Yeah. She can clock watch for ages, and it'll be like you can literally see the seconds slowly going and stuff. And other times you can be like, wow, where's these 5 hours just gone? You know what I mean? Or whatever. So, yes.
Exactly. It very much depends where your mind's at. And like I say, waiting for a kettle to boil is the best way to slow down time.
Yes.
Absolutely. Or waiting for a bus.
That's true. Yes. Very true. So I don't know if
have I got anyone in here? Can't see. We've got 2 people watching, so hello to the 2 of you who are out there.
hello.
That might just be us 2. I don't know how that works.
I don't know. I haven't got YouTube on. So
oh no, someone's jumped in. Andrea. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Oh, nice to see you. Hope you're well. So, yes, well, we will be continuing from where we sort of left off last week, which was to begin to discuss issues around death and dying and grief and all that goes with that.
Yeah. I looked online, and there was both 5 stages of grief and also 7 stages of grief, apparently. So you can have either option. Well, I've just been alerted that you're live there, so it was a bit late, but I'm just getting an alert. So hopefully everyone else is getting an alert.
I'm sure people will jump in as and when, yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of talks through them as like inner stages, you know. Shock and denial being the first one, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the 2 things are very interlinked. I mean, it was originally kind of the whole idea of the stages of grief was really some lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote about this extensively on death and dying. And I did read that many years ago. But she was also talking about not only dealing with someone who's died, you know, the process of dealing with your grief from having lost somebody who's died, but also for people who are dealing with terminal illness. So the 2 things, there may be some connection, but they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think that was the original thinking behind this, is someone coming to terms with their own mortality is a massive shock too. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially if they've been diagnosed with something that is terminal and to have to sort of deal with that, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like dealing with the knowing that there's no future, or like having this constant, you know, thing over you all the time, I guess.
In a way. And I think what's sometimes slightly missed is a lot of people carry this with them anyway, even if they haven't been diagnosed.
Yeah.
The fear of, oh, well, it could all end any moment, actually prevents people from living a full and enjoyable life. I think it can very much get in the way. But yes, I mean, obviously a long-term terminal illness is going to be a hell of a thing to deal with, and many people face this on a daily basis. And
also to face the grief of those around you as well, because not only would you be dealing with your own, you'd be dealing with those around you.
Yeah, and I think that's true of almost any illness, whether or not you believe it to be a terminal thing or not, is the fact that people often end up looking after the relatives rather than themselves trying to shield them from it all. There's a lot of that goes on.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But I think it's kind of a strange thing, because obviously I think you don't really think about dealing with grief before anyone's died. You think about it afterwards, don't you? When actually it is a part of it. And I know that one of the things it said was with the third step apparently is anger and bargaining. Now, bargaining you wouldn't do after someone had passed, but that would be something you would do before.
This is more the case of someone who's coming to terms with their own terminal illness. Will quite often go, they'll go through that. It's not happening to me. Why me? I'm cross about it being me. Don't make it me, and I'll do this if you don't make it me. And then I can't do anything, so I'm kind of giving up. And then the actual kind of rebalancing, which is acceptance. I don't think the bargaining really, as far as I'm aware, really comes into the process of when you've actually lost somebody.
No, I wouldn't have thought so afterwards. I could understand maybe prior, like if you believe like in God, for instance, or whatever you believe in, then maybe they would sort of pray to them and say, please spare them. I'll do whatever. Or take me instead, or whatever it is that people may say in that instance, I guess. But I very much think that's a before death type of thing rather than an after death. I can't see that happening. In with anger as well. Like, never been. I mean, I suppose it depends how someone passes away. I've never felt anger towards my parents, but I have felt anger in how they were treated before they died.
Yes.
So that's very different. But maybe if someone took their own life, maybe someone would be angry with them.
It's
Maybe
quite possible there's a level of anger, people who feel left on their own, abandoned, who have abandonment issues anyway. It's going to exacerbate whatever issues you have, it's going to magnify. And abandonment, fear of abandonment, you quite often hear people say, oh, everybody I've ever loved has left me. That's a really common thing that people will say.
Yeah.
Although it's slightly off topic, naturally that's going to happen because the first people you generally love under normal circumstances are your parents, and they are most likely to be some of the first people you lose. All grandparents, of course.
Which I suppose so if they look at it from that point of view, they can then think, well, it stops them getting close to anyone else, because getting close to them means it's going to hurt because they're going to lose them, or they feel like it's them that sort of somehow has this control over that happening, essentially, and so avoid being close to people because of that.
A lot of people will actually do that for all sorts of reasons, but they won't get too close because they think it's going to be too painful. Again, it's a pain, but it's a heart pain, not a physical pain. And it's the fear of that because it's a familiar thing. So it's often shaped by whatever's happened previously through life that then starts to shape the attitudes going forwards. Yes.
Yeah. Definitely. On the shock part of it, I think that must, obviously, when it's sudden, definitely, because it's not expected. I think when it's expected, I'm not sure if it's a shock as such. I mean, I suppose it could be, but with my dad, it wasn't a shock. My mum a little bit more, but because of our age and other things, it wasn't as a shock as if someone was, I suppose, just knocked over and killed. That must be an horrific shock, they'd just gone to work or they'd just gone wherever, and that wasn't expected, or in a massive tragedy like Hillsborough, for instance, or similar things like that, when they've gone to something that's just so normal, or that they do every week, that you wouldn't expect to happen. So to get around to that being a shock,
Yeah, and that's also where the anger will come in, because it's the
Yeah.
unfairness of it, the unjustness of it, that someone's life has been ended, in a horrible way before their time. There's that sense, and I think any parent who loses a child, which is probably one of the most difficult things, because it's so unexpected. And I heard people talking about it this morning. Had actually lost quite young children to suicide, which is horrific. And as a parent, to have to then deal with that, having lost, when you expect to be the one that goes first, there's a whole thing of the world isn't right if this can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine having gone through losing a child. I know people who have, and I have to say I can't begin to understand. Well, you can begin to understand, because I think we all have that slight horror when we have children of like losing them. You sort of fear thing, but to have that reality must be just unthinkable. Like,
Yeah, it's the worst of all worlds, isn't it? You
yeah.
may hear noise in the background. I've actually got my roof being replaced, so don't panic
All
if you hear strange noises. That's why I keep looking out as things keep falling down outside. Right.
No problem. But yeah, according to this, it was shock and denial, pain and guilt being next. So guilty for all sorts of things, guilty for could be last conversation you had, could be because you never said whatever you wish you had said, could be because you weren't there, could be because there could be many things, couldn't it? I think.
Yeah, guilt is a massive thing, and even if people don't think that they do guilt on an unconscious level, it's often there. And that sense of regret of, I should have done X, or could I have done more, or could I have prevented, particularly again in a sudden death situation, is there something I could have done that would have prevented that if I had known, if I had, what ifs. People will play that game.
It is a lot of what ifs, isn't it? And that's the thing, is what ifs. You can't answer those, can you? It's like,
no.
I think my guilt is being, if I do let go of chasing up what happened to them, like, that's my guilt. Like, am I letting them down, kind of thing? I'm starting to think more like I'm not. I think doing positive rather than spending X amount of time to not get anywhere is probably not going to work. And I think doing positive things and keep, doing things like this, or the charity stuff, that's much better way to spend my time.
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever get where I wanted to with trying to chase up, you know what I mean? It's never.
It's a massive undertaking to take on the might of the NHS and their organisational systems and the way they all close ranks and the whole thing. I've heard it too many times. I wish we could, but I think it's a hell of a burden for one person to take on, and it's something that needs an organisation to campaign for and to sort out. And there are people that are doing that. So I think for one person, especially someone like yourself who's already, still in the grief process and dealing with it all, would find it, just basically quite depressing. I think, not to get anywhere with it.
I think that exactly what my sister said to me, that she would be worried about the effect on my mental health. And when I did get to the end of it, there may still be not the answer that I wanted, and it probably will never be that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could have done so much more positively.
You're never going to get the answers, because they're not going to just say, oh yeah, we got it wrong.
Yeah.
They're just not. And plus, you're in a situation where you need a certain input from the health services for your well-being. And is it going to prejudice their treatment of you? Would probably be my concern, sitting on the outside looking in. I'd be thinking, you actually now have a responsibility to take care of you and make sure that you're not jeopardizing your treatments.
Definitely. And then it's got anger and bargaining, which is the third thing, which we've covered. Then depression, loneliness, and reflection is the next.
Yeah. That's the real loss, isn't it? That's when it sinks in. And I think that can be quite a while later, actually. And people are often surprised that it will can be, 6 months or a year later, when all of a sudden you go, hang on a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I got to that. I think I've gotten to that stage, to be honest. And then it says an upward turn. After that is step 5. And then step 6, reconstruction. So I'm guessing the upward turn is when you kind of think, I need to maybe start focusing on more positive things, blah blah blah.
Taking control again, I think, over a situation which you had no control over. And it's a way of accepting it in a very positive way and going, okay, this has happened. It's okay that I don't feel okay sometimes. However, on balance, you start to feel better more than you don't. So you can start to see what maybe the things that will trigger stuff. There are going to be anniversaries, there are going to be difficult times or people that create a situation, but you then have some measure of control about whether you engage with that, how you work with it. And I think for people, sometimes losing somebody can help them kind of cement your own beliefs. It kind of forms your own philosophy about what you think life is about.
Yeah.
I think there is a positive that comes out of that. It's like, well, okay, so there is a finite thing. It's not infinite. What can I do to live my life more to the full? What do I want from it?
Yeah. And then the last one, and then it says reconstruction and then acceptance and hope. But I also think relief is in there as well somewhere.
I think because that's a burden is lifted. There's a level of relief and not feeling so responsible for everything that's occurred. Because some people will make everything their responsibility. It's just part of the makeup. And to go, actually, I am not responsible for that and I don't have to carry it is a relief too.
And I think if someone's suffering, then that can have that effect as well, that sort of relief that they're not suffering anymore. But then I think you can feel guilty for that as well. It's sort of like it can get quite complicated, can't it?
There's never one emotion. I mean, that is the flip side of it, is that yes, there's relief that someone is no longer in pain, but there's still but they're gone. And it's this weird thing where I find that people kind of believe in bad magic more than good. And I know this is crossing over into slightly different territory, but it's this thing of it's much easier to believe that we can influence on negative level than it is on a positive level. So we kind of think, it was me not wanting them to suffer instrumental in the fact they're no longer here. It's kind of like, and can I be responsible for that? It's like, well, no, not really.
No. Like if you'd have just thought, it'd be better, and then you felt guilty about having that thought because they did pass or happened to pass at that time or die.
Yeah.
Just say pass or die. Because pass sounds like you're playing a game, doesn't it?
It's one of these things, there's passing away in dying, but it seems to be an Americanization where we've got, saying somebody has passed. And that always makes me think they've just gone by on a bus rather than they've actually gone on to the next level, if you know what I mean, or however you wish to interpret it. They have actually left this mortal coil and are no longer present. So, and we do have a great tendency as a society not to talk about death. We'll talk about anything else.
Yeah.
But death is a difficult one, particularly on a personal level.
But it's one of the guarantees in life, isn't it? Like, everybody dies, and everyone around you dies as well. When that is, obviously nobody knows until it happens, type of thing. And
as you get older, you will probably attend more funerals than weddings. I mean, that's the balance they say happens, and that's it's just a fact of life, and it is part of the natural cycle. You kind of think of it as a cyclical thing. Sorry, this is taking scaffolding down. I'm like, please don't come through my window, because I'd rather be here for the rest of the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On screen,
decimation
of a host. That's all right.
That would not quite work, would it? But yeah, it's such a weird thing that we tend to avoid the things that are very. I'm trying to think of the best word to use, but I think that cause pain. I guess the more pain that is involved, the more we avoid it.
Yes. It would be ironic, Andrea. Actually, Fauna's just come in and said she asked her mum's doctor the other week when she was very bad if she was near death, and the relatives were appalled. But that is a fair question, because that's preparing yourself, that's knowledge, and you want to know for her sake, for yours, what's going on. But people are absolutely apoplectic about that kind of thing, aren't they?
Yeah. It's one of them things, and then also doctors tend not to put they'll sort of skirt around it a little bit, or they'll tell you things in a way that's not telling you directly, so that I don't know if it's like trying to prepare you or something, but it's kind of like it's slightly skirting around it sometimes.
Because they don't know for sure, but they've seen a lot more of this sort of thing than we have. And I kind of think their honesty would be appreciated. You know, you need to know. It's helpful to have knowledge, at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, are you able to prepare if you do that? And maybe for some people, the answer is yes. I would say for my sister, she probably would agree and say that it's better for her to be prepared for those things. Like, she likes, but that's her all over in every part of her life. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Whereas, like, I'm a lot more laid back in that sense.
Yeah. Different people have different ways of dealing with it, and obviously the doctors, how they handle the patients who are going through this process. Some people never want to know. They don't want to know. They are probably very frightened. They and the doctors are as gentle as they can be. But yeah, you know, I mean, I wouldn't know how that would be, how you would handle a family situation if you were a doctor trying to work with a family on when someone's, you know, coming up to their final days, you know.
Yeah. It must be hard to be in that situation. You know what I mean? And especially in you know, working in, I don't know, as a what do they call it? Elderly doctor. What's it called? Orthopedic, is it? Orthopedic. That's bones, isn't it?
I think that's bones, but I know what you mean. My stepsister worked in palliative care for many years in a hospital.
Yeah, so obviously that's
Macmillan nurses, you know, they're used to dealing with it, but I'm sure a lot of people aren't.
No,
and don't find don't read the relatives right, or don't get the, you know, understand.
Yeah, but it's one of them things. It's like, how do you do that sort of situation? You know, geriatric. That's the word.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
Now Chris Tyler's come in with, when my mum was ill, the doctor told me she was gravely ill and had a couple of days at most. She hung in there for 3 weeks and slept with the phone. He slept with the phone beside him. I mean, this is the thing, you know, it's people sometimes really hang on because they do not want to go. And the power of the mind over the body never ceases to amaze me. What the power of, you're living on willpower. My grandfather was a case in point at 97. He absolutely did not want to go and absolutely hung in there beyond all, you know, normal logical thought.
Yeah.
Because I think he was actually quite scared. Yeah. As I understand it, I wasn't terribly close to that particular grandfather, but yeah, he'd had an interesting life. We won't even begin to go there. It's very complicated. But yeah, so geriatric, yes, that's the word.
Well, when with my mum, they said she was poorly, and to me,
Poorly, it's like you're poorly after a bad curry, you know. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Poorly is not. And then when I complained about it, because obviously we found out later that she was asleep all the time, not speaking, not eating, not drinking, whatever. And
yeah,
when I complained about it, and the nurse said to me, I was there when the doctor told your sister, do you not speak to your sister like this? She was really not very nice. And I said, yes, we do, but you told her, the doctor said she was poorly. That's not seriously ill to me.
no. I mean, when they start saying very poorly, or you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's it seems very artfully vague, that one. That's
Yes, it was. And then obviously
yeah,
afterwards, when she did pass away, the doctor who spoke to my sister said, well, we were just keeping her comfortable, treating her for end of life, basically. But they never said that
yeah,
to us at all.
exactly. And I think a level of honesty. I think it does depend on who you get. It's
Yeah,
just doctors are more experienced than others. You know, they're under a certain amount of pressure. They don't necessarily get trained in this psychological side of the work. I don't think. I
yeah,
think it has to be
no,
left a little bit on the side. But yeah, it's a difficult one. In fact, Fauna's just popped in here and said, I'm very prepared for death, my own and others. That's how I deal with it. So even though I'm respectful of others' feelings, I seem to be too practical for most people's comfort. I actually am a little bit like that myself. I'm
mm,
very practical, but I've dealt with it a lot in my lifetime. So, and I've thought about it a lot. So I kind of, although I really understand for there are many people who go through a huge swathe of their life not having lost, not knowing loss at all, and then it suddenly happens and it absolutely slays them. Yeah, like I say, that yeah, I thought, gosh, that's a lucky life if you can go through life without loss, you know, until your 40s or 50s. You're doing pretty damn well.
yeah, I think I did. To be honest, I think I did pretty well, and then I think they just took them all at us at the one time.
Yeah, that's
Because
the one after another, a perfect storm.
as a child, I lost two of my grandparents had already passed before I was born. Another two I lost a year and a half apart. So one when I was 10, nearly 11, and the other one when I was 12. And then I knew of people I went to school with, or a person I'd worked with who'd passed away, but no one really close to us. Like sort of my uncle when my daughter was born, but I was like more close to my auntie and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it was like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
really like sort of my parents, and then my parents, my auntie, and my friend all in that 5 months. That kind of just threw me a bit.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, to
I was,
deal with one is quite something, but when you've got a number of losses that happen one on top of the other, the effect is
yeah.
huge because it just feels like your world's falling in. You know,
But
everybody seems
I
to be.
think also there was a lot of other stuff happening because obviously my dad was in a hospital, and my brother had been in hospital. My brother's son had been diagnosed with nocturnal epilepsy. My niece had a baby in the middle of it, and she had preeclampsia. She was in hospital at the same time as my mum.
Blimey.
And my sister's husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer, all in the same time, which was just,
Yeah, that's
it
a
was
world
like,
being upside down, isn't it?
hmm. And I sometimes think, how did I even get through that? I can't tell you the answer to that. I really don't know. You just have to, don't you? Somehow.
Kind of the thing. People think, oh, aren't you strong or aren't you brave? Aren't you this, that, the other? And it isn't that. It's a case of,
No.
well, what choice have you got? You have to keep
Yeah.
going. And it's often much later that you process and assimilate and resolve some of the stuff. You know, obviously, I think that's something that's happening for you, is now that you're starting to really be able to talk to the benefit of a little distance. Or everything that you do on this level and all the stuff that you've done is starting to change it a bit. It's all settling down.
Because in the beginning, I could just talk about it like I wasn't even involved.
Yeah.
And I know that's how I was processing it. That's how I was coping. You know what I mean? But I've spoken to other people who've talked about not dealing with it at all till for like 30 years, you know, and things like that. And it's not until then that, you know, they've had some professional help to be able to do that and process those things, because they've just shut them away and probably shut themselves away as well, and
Absolutely, yeah.
And just sort of somehow kept going. But eventually
that stuff's still there. It's still running under the surface, and the fears and the anxieties and all the questions and all the hurt still run, and it's very close to the surface, which is why it normally only, you know, what will quite often happen for people who do experience a form of a breakdown or something is they'll have had a series of events, and then there'll be one thing that just opens the floodgates because they simply cannot hold it anymore.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're still your parents, whatever age, and that is true. The pain of losing a parent is no more or less depending on the age you are or they are when you lose them. I think there are swings and roundabouts. I kind of feel, had my mother lived to a certain age, I would have been devastated whenever she died, but I would have known her a lot better as a person had she lived long, and probably been a lot closer, you know, in a better way than you are when you're a child, and it's, you know, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
So there's no right way to go or right age to go, but you like to think someone's lived a decent full life, that's a better place to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and when you get dementia and things coming in, as Fawn was mentioning there, you know, in a way they don't know, but as you were saying last week, Lainie, the whole process of grieving before they've gone, because they are going by bit by bit, they are actually leaving you, is extremely painful.
And with the dementia, obviously, my mum had it, and I remember when she first had it, and I remember just thinking, oh, I the thought of her forgetting who I was, that was like really, you know, that was the only really thing that I thought about. To be honest, I didn't think about, and until you've witnessed someone with dementia, you don't realize how much it changes them as a person. Like, it takes their personality, it takes who they were. Do you know what I mean? It's not just about forgetting things. It's like it just robs them of who they were, and they become. It's kind of almost like they go in reverse of like age, in a sense, and go further backward towards being a baby in a way, and in some ways, like my mum died before, like she still knew who we all were, so I never got to that point. And in some way, that's one thing. I don't know if the best word to use is a positive out of it, but like I never got to that stage, because I know that would have like really hurt. And I was talking to someone the other day whose mum is at that stage, and he visits her in a home, and she doesn't know who he is at all. He just and said it's just horrific.
And sometimes people become violent as well. You know, they literally, people who've never, you know, had a crossword in their lives basically can become totally unrecognizable in aspects of personality.
My mum could be verbally aggressive, like not so much to us, mostly my dad, bless him, and he used to get it mostly, but she wouldn't. He was always trying to help her, and she wouldn't have it. You know what I mean? She used to get like shout at him for nothing, like, and you know, a couple of times my brother said, like, my brother sort of said to her, "Mom, you can't do that. You can't speak to him like that." Obviously, she wasn't aware, you know, like, not really, like, and if she would have been horrified at herself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Jones said here that she's prepared for death because they had a massive stroke at 35 and still here at 62. And he managed a lot of stuff over the years. I do think having a significant illness, experience, fright, what have you, at a young age, again, shapes you hugely because it really makes you reevaluate. And the same is true for me. I had breast cancer at 30. So I absolutely thought, shit, okay, it's curtains for me too, thinking I was going to repeat the pattern of, and I'm still here at nearly 60. So it's like, well, I ain't going anywhere. But it changes everything. It really does. Yeah.
St. Jordan saying, I feel you're getting older. The thought of my mind hopefully still being okay and young, but not being able to physically do simple things that I do now gives me the creeps. Do you know what? I mean, obviously, because I'm physically unable, it isn't. I mean, for me personally, I'm just saying, it isn't as bad as you can imagine it to be. But then I have this kind of attitude now where I focus on what I can do and not what I can't do. Doesn't mean that that always works, but 99% of the time it does. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it
you
works.
find ways around things, don't you? You find ways around things, and it must be
Yeah,
frustrating not being able to do
it
things.
can
But
be at times, like I said before, obviously with the light, getting the Ring doorbell and the light, so I can switch my own light off and on and things like that. So there are positives, and also if you do it gradually, it doesn't seem as much. I mean, obviously mine was kind of an instant, I guess. I did, yeah, but again, it's you just find ways of coping and moving forward and still being able to enjoy things that you can. You know what I mean? I mean, I
yeah,
was never gonna train to beat Usain Bolt at any time anyway, so I had no issue there.
but that's the thing. People are a lot stronger and a lot more resilient, a lot more creative
Yeah, I think
than they think they are. It's
the
when you're
fear
faced
of
with
it
something
is
difficult.
always far worse. The
Yeah,
fear of it is always far worse.
yeah, yeah. There's always ways around things and ways of looking at things differently and changing. You can't always change the facts of how things are, but you can change how you feel about them. It is possible, and you have to sometimes just to carry on. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
wouldn't manage, Oh, yeah.
Alison saying, I looked after my mum for nearly 2 years after she was diagnosed terminally ill and was given only a month. The best thing I have ever done, and so many laughs and loving time. Took 2 years off work as a midwife and don't regret it. Helped me grieve and have open feelings to others. That's
Yeah,
really lovely.
lovely.
I think that's the thing as well. It was like, it's making a positive out of the situation, and obviously you got that time to spend with your mum and make memories with her that you wouldn't have um had she not had that diagnosis, kind of thing. And I have memories with my mum after the diagnosis of dementia, and it was about sort of just remembering those things, isn't it? Like focusing on them.
Wow. I just have to say, wow. So what Fauna's been through, it's like, right, well, you've dealt with it 3 times.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. I like that attitude.
And you're a cat, Fauna.
Yeah, it's like 6 more to go, isn't it? Yeah, 9
Yeah.
lives. 9
9
lives. And that's remarkable. But it's amazing what people can come through. And I think the strength
Yeah.
of people is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. So
Definitely.
go you. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
But yeah, it's amazing what you can do, what you can get through, and what I think obviously fear and anxiety and all those things that have the ability of crippling people, and I've been there. you know what I mean? I've been on the other side of that. I didn't live, you know what I mean? And I still wish I had that time back. And there's no way you can have that time back, you know what I mean? Now and then it just comes back on as that, oh, if I'd done things differently, or if I'd have got help sooner and things like that. But you don't get that time back. You never do. You can only make the best of the time you've got now in whatever situation you're in with life, whatever's going on around you, and making memories and positive times with those, you know. Definitely.
It highlights what's important. I think the lessons that we learn from loss and grief are that you have to do what the best you have with the time you have, however long or short it is, and it's quality, not quantity, that matters. So, and I think things like, you know, the kind of all the lockdown that we've all been through, I think as again made people more reflective and more focused on what really matters, which is the people who you're interwoven your life with. That's probably more important than anything else.
To sort of the love and just making other people happy, and not just yourself. I think you get as much joy from making other people happy as you do when you're happy yourself. You know what I mean? It's not just
It's a two-way street, isn't it? I mean, if
totally
you
a
make other
two-way
people
street.
happy, it makes you happy, doesn't it?
Does. So it's amazing, and obviously just having like hope and looking forward, and yeah, makes a big difference.
And I just kind of firmly feel that sense of hope and a belief in your own future, and that you have a level of determination about what happens in that future, is very, very key to being healthy, to getting the most out of life. Yeah. Jacqueline Armstrong's popped in, and hello, and said we lost our dad in 2020 to esophageal cancer. He also had dementia. We nursed him at home. Oh, that's a double whammy. January this year, we lost my mother-in-law and father-in-law, both to cancer too, only 6 days apart. Oh,
Really
yeah, sort of a partners in life. Yeah, often happens that people who are very close in life will go around the same time. Yeah, but that's
well, my mum was 5 weeks after my dad, so yeah. And they say like they just can't live without each other. 50 years together, my mum and dad. I don't know about Jacqueline's father-in-law, mother-in-law.
Yeah. Some people genuinely don't thrive without the other person. It partly depends on personality as well as the relationship. People are different. You never quite know how it's going to work out, but it happens surprisingly often. It really does. Yeah,
definitely.
Oh, together at the end. There we go. There was a double funeral there. Oh, there we go. That's what I meant to do. Yeah.
It's the thing as well with funerals. You know, like it's that sort of to say goodbye, isn't it? To sort of send them on the way in whatever way you believe, whether you know that's God or whatever. It's supposed to be that sort of final part, isn't it? But it isn't really, in terms of like what you going through and in what is still to go forward. But it's kind of for everyone else, life just goes on, apart from those who were closest to the family, that have lost, to the loved one that had gone. That's not the case, is it?
It's definitely not everything over. But I think it's so important to have these rituals, for want of a better word, that mark important stages of life, because memories are made there, reconnections are made with more extended members of the family, and it does make it real, especially for people who've lost somebody and they weren't there, they couldn't be there. You know, with everything being hospitalized and medicalized, you know, death is a medical thing rather than a fact of life. Is that people aren't together at that time, so the funeral has become a very important one. And a lot of people had funerals delayed through COVID as well. We certainly had that with my father. There was a delay of nearly 2 months, which is, horrible because you're in a limbo,
Yeah.
and everything takes a very long time to sort out. But I think they've kind of caught up with that side of things a little bit, that people aren't suffering that way and more people are allowed to be at funerals as well. Because I think that's difficult if you have a big family and you're saying, well, only X number can come, and that's another level of pain and guilt and everything else on top. Wow, fauna. I'm loving the idea of a firework display. To be honest, I actually thought that myself. I quite like the idea of going up going out with a bang, as they say. I think that's very forward thinking of you. And also it does save some level of decision making and pain for your family around you. I think it's thoughtful. It's not easy for many people to even contemplate, but it's very thoughtful and very responsible thing to do. All power to you then.
My parents had paid for theirs and had said whether they wanted burying or cremating or whatever they wanted in that sense, whether they wanted churches or whatever. They'd done all that side of it, but then we did like flowers, songs, things like that. So, but it was just they both had 3 songs each, so we just picked a song each, the 3 of us.
Yeah.
That had meaning to us.
Yeah.
Jordan says, my stepdad had cancer and died 4 years ago in the cancer hospital. October just gone. My mum was diagnosed with a different type of cancer. My mum recognised the nurse from where, but didn't know from where. On the way out, after her first appointment, she asked the nurse. The nurse said she looked after my stepdad when he was there, and the nurse remembered my mum, but didn't say anything just in case it upset her.
Yeah, it's probably a wise move, really.
Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, this is a tricky one too, Dad died first. And when you're an only child as well, obviously everything then falls on the one person. And I'm aware because I have one child, and I want to try and make things as easy as possible for them, because it's a horrible burden on your own. It's difficult enough when you've got relatives, because that can also bring complications. But thinking ahead is no bad thing, but a horrible time, absolutely horrific. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Something positive out of the pandemic. It's Alison there saying, help the family join together. Yeah, that's good. That as you say, that she was with you then, thankfully, yes. And now things move forward. Now you've got your retirement and a whole life spread out ahead of you to fill with what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yes, retirements can be very exciting, especially if you've got a plan. You've got things you want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, pressing wrong buttons here. Yeah, this was the problem with. Oh, press the wrong button again. This was the problem with COVID, wasn't it? At a graveside ceremony, yeah. Obviously just the time and the rules and regs. Yeah, very, very different.
Yeah, I think it was 30 in the church, but everyone had to wear masks, and it was sort of every odd aisle type of thing.
It was really weird. So you had to sit there with a mask on, and then when I had to go up and do a eulogy, which wasn't the easiest thing I've ever done in the world, I have to say, I did one, and my uncle also did one, and he'd not been well, so he's like, oh dear God. Probably one of the toughest things I've ever done, to hold my shit together, to be perfectly honest. In front of friends and family, and with all that going on,
I wrote the whole thing, but I didn't get up and speak. I just wrote the whole story about from where they grew up and like everybody they knew and stuff like that.
I remember. I think you popped it somewhere, didn't you? You did share it with us.
Yeah.
And it was very moving and very beautifully written.
Stories of them. I just wanted it to come from someone who knew them, rather than just say things to them for them to read something that You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Gosh, got it. That's a valid point from Jordan there. This is 1994 Clapham. Oh, Clapham coins. I've got it now.
yes.
Yes. I'm going to see the relative afterwards. Yeah. Don't always get the opportunity, to be honest. I think, again, it depends very much on circumstances. I never really felt the need, because I felt it's for me, it was that kind of, well, Elvis has left the building, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He just left with the building. There's the essence of the person is no longer there. But I know people who feel very much that they need to do that. Again, it's part of that making it real, and acknowledging the fact that somebody has
And
died.
it brings some comfort and stuff.
Yeah, again, it very much depends on sort of family culture and what people are comfortable with. Yeah,
Personally,
but tend not to.
Personally, for me, I preferred not to. Have seen someone. I've seen my uncle when I was 19, I think, and it just didn't. It wasn't the same, like you said. They've left the building, as it were, so
Yeah.
it just didn't feel right for me. And I decided after that time that I wouldn't ever do it again. But like I said, my cousin's got a lot of comfort out of it. My dad was there; he got comfort out of it.
People
When
do.
my uncle died, and when my parents died, because my mum had COVID, anyone who went to see her wouldn't have been able to go at the funeral, so that didn't actually happen. My dad didn't have COVID, so anyone was allowed to see him. So like my brother-in-law went, and my cousins went, but none of us three chose to, or their grandchildren chose to. And that's, like I said, it's how you feel, isn't it? It's how it feels best for you, type of thing.
Yes, and I again, I think it's something that happens less and less, because I think people have become somewhat distanced, and death has become more of something that happens in a hospital. Is a medical thing, and is not the idea of someone passing away at home in their own bed peacefully, with a loved one holding their hand. It seems to be a fading thing, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Fauna's done quite a few eulogies. Yeah, and again, I think it's because clearly you've got whatever it takes to be able to do it and to hold it together. Yeah, and I have been with people when they've died.
Yeah.
I very much feel, sense, know the soul leaves. Literally, it's like someone leaving a building, someone walking out the door.
Chris saying funerals don't have to be expensive either. My dad paid in a scheme for years. We still had to add to it over £4,000 when Mum died. We got a simplicity one, which was around 1,000.
Yeah, there were many options. Yeah, people are often led to believe it's got to be a certain way, or all this has to happen. You need this and that and the other. You know, I think now there is more choice, and again, I suppose it's incumbent on all of us as being alive people to do our research and decide what we think would be best for ourselves and our families.
It's ridiculous in all the little bits and pieces that you get charged for. I know, like my parents I think they had both paid like £5,000 each for their funerals, but they both went over, and that was without the stone, and the stone was just about, I think it was about £2,000 just for the headstone. But so you're talking 8,000. Well, for both funerals, and the headstone, you're talking about 12,000, 13,000 pound, which is mental, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, in our family, it tends to be more of has generally been a cremation thing, so there hasn't been a physical place.
Yeah, well, my dad got buried, but my mum was cremated, so yeah.
I mean, my husband's family tend to. There's a particular cemetery up in Birmingham, where quite a few of them are. It's like a family sort of, and they've all got little plaques, which is lovely. But I personally don't feel I need to go somewhere physical to.
But I don't. My sister does.
But
I've
everyone,
never been. I've never been to their grave. I've seen it because my sisters took photos when their headstone was in, but I don't feel like I need to go there. I don't feel like they'd be there. Essentially, I kind of feel them around as more like an everyday life type of thing. But my sister likes to go there and stuff. So
yeah, and again, it's what brings comfort, isn't it? Some people feel comfort being in a particular place. Other people don't feel that need. It's so different. And again, Fauna and I seem to have a lot in common. I kind of think, yeah, actually, I contemplated it and thought it might be a bit distressing for the family, but yeah, because you return to the earth from whence you came. It seems
that would be cool, actually.
It seems that you nourish the earth as the earth nourishes you. It's a lovely, but probably a bit of a fast step for other people who have have a different view on it, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen the humanist ones. I think that's probably like more closest to something for me, but I quite like that. And it was like, because my parents didn't get we didn't have a wake because obviously there was nowhere able at the time. There was nowhere open. And it was always going to be that we were going to do it later, but then it just didn't seem right. So in the end, we just got 5 saplings planted for each of them. And that I felt much better about that because it was kind of comforting in the sense that they're going to help nature, you know what I mean, and they'll help something else live, and that just makes me feel better about it. So I like that idea much more.
And it's kind of a long-term thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, those trees are going to be there for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And
because you can do things like get a bench or something, but I think it's £1,000 to get to have the name on a bench, and it's only lasts like 5 years or something like that, and it has to be renewed or whatever. And I just thought, no, whereas like the trees, hundreds of years from now they'll still be there. So it just I got more comfort in that, much more.
Yeah.
Jordan saying, I totally agree that times change. I read somewhere that Victorians took photos, etc., that obviously obsolete now. I think anyway, times change. I agree. Yeah, I've heard of those where they have them in a photograph of the whole family and they've passed away.
It was often children as well because the mortality rate was so high back then. It was often siblings, and they'd sort of prop this child up.
Yeah.
But I can, photography was quite new then. I can see that people wanted to preserve the memory. They'd make lockets and jewellery out of hair, and so it was a way of having a tangible connection to someone who'd gone. So I do understand it. I cannot, although I think nowadays it probably doesn't have the same feel to it. I can see why people did it. Yeah.
John says people cope in such different ways. For example, when a partner dies, some may get another partner quickly, while some want to be alone for their future life. It's true. Some people
I've seen that happen on both instances.
Yeah, they can't be alone. They can't cope to be on their own or whatever.
No.
And others, don't want to be with anyone. So
yeah, that depends on so much, but it's usually down to individual personalities. Some people just don't seem to do well on their own and kind of almost need looking after, and they will attract somebody who will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't always go down so well with the rest of the family, though.
No.
Just saying. Yeah. Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, Fauna's saying that her youngest daughter has already thought, what a family. They certainly think about these things. Told the family her wishes, doesn't want a physical burial plot. She wants her ashes putting into running water. So she relates very much to the element of water. That's amazing. Like I say, I'd quite like to go up in a rocket. I'd like to. be a part of a firework display. That would be my kind of fun thing. Or where you can make the jewel. Don't they make it? They can compress part of the ashes into like a diamond, into a jewel. But I mean, that's probably a bit over the top. But a firework, that would be cool.
Yeah, I think it would have to be silent one for me though.
Oh,
like
yeah, your dog doesn't
because of the yeah, because the obviously the reaction it has, but yeah, I'd probably just say chuck us in Roger Pond or something. Down the seafront.
Bird food, swan food.
Swan food, yeah. I wouldn't mind doing that. That would work.
Yeah, I always think you're not there anyway. So either way, your molecules get distributed back into the environment. But yeah, it's, and we've gone over an hour.
Oh wow!
I know we've gone over. We've overstayed our welcome. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will carry on because clearly there's a lot to talk about here. So if you've got any questions or anything, just pop them in the comments. It'll be back on Lainie's channel next week because we're are we doing next week? It's half term, so are we?
I haven't got little kids, so it's fine for me.
Yeah, it'll be fine for me. So yeah, we'll go with that then.
Yeah.
Oh, the final note there was Claire Vickers said, "We scattered my dad off the North Sea coast in a lifeboat. He was a merchantman. Last adventure." That's
best place to be, the North Sea.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I obviously I live in Sunderland, so right on the North Sea coast is where I'm at. I wouldn't mind being in there, all the waves and stuff. But yeah, we'll come back next week if anyone's got any questions or want to talk about anything specific within the death topic. We'll kind of do that and just leave it open to everything, really.
Exactly.
Maybe.
See where it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I shall press the button and we can do that awkward waving.
Bye. Bye.
Here we go, and the other button.